Hey everyone, just finished up a house pre-wire. We had about 30 to 40 wires in this house. Did some unique things. It's a big house, so I want to take you through some of the things that we did that may help you in your next house pre-wire. Here's the main living room fireplace. Here we got a Cat 6 and a coax drop up top next to that outlet for a TV. We also have a conduit opening there on that brush plate, and where that goes, it goes actually through the fireplace area into this cabinetry over here. And you can open up this latch here and see there's where the conduit comes out. And so the benefit of that is you can run HDMI cords or any other cabling that you need to connect your TV to whatever sound system or anything like that. And speaking of sound system, we've pre-wired the ceiling with 2 sets of 16/4 speaker wire. So those are ready for client speakers whenever they're wanting to install those. Throughout the house, you'll have some of these Cat 6 drops coming through the ceiling. Those are for Wi-Fi access points. We got RJ45 connectors on the end to accept Wi-Fi access points. And then you also got some extra TV wires. There are 8 TVs in this house, 8 TV locations. And so we have Cat 6 and coax at each location. We always recommend at least Cat 6 because that will give you a good network connection in most TVs. That's the priority anyway. So we have that on all 8 TVs in this house. Now this is the type of office that we love to see. The big thing is you got nice natural light in this room. Really high ceilings makes it a really cool room to be in. But the best part is they have a Cat 6 and coax for their TV. They have a Cat 6 drop for their desk. They have a second Cat 6 drop for their desk over here. And so what that allows you to do is put your desk on either side of the wall, and you have a hardwired connection into your network. So you get maximum reliability and speed from whatever network software that you're running. Again, we got wireless access point pre-wire. Here's a secondary office location where you can put a little office nook. And again, we have a Cat 6 drop there as well. As we go up this really incredible stairwell, you can see how high the ceiling is in here. This is about 2 or 3 stories high just in this room. We have a Wi-Fi access point right on this exterior so that you can cover this whole area, top and bottom floor, just with that one wireless access point using this nice open area. In every bedroom, there's multiple Cat 6 outlets, depending on where you want to have a bed or a desk or anything like that, maybe a gaming console. So here we have a Cat 6 drop there and a Cat 6 drop in that corner, depending on where they want to put their equipment. So this room's a little crazy with our low voltage pre-wire, but we wanted to prepare them for any kind of solution or system they wanted to have in this room. So you can see they have a Cat 6 and a coax behind me just for a regular TV. And then there are 2 brush plates on either side. And those go down to the right and left of the TV. You can see one down there and then the other one on the other side. And so what you get is this huge wall that can now accept a TV, a projector, any kind of system they want in here. And they can be able to run HDMI cables afterward or any other wire that they want to have connecting their TV to maybe their media console, wherever they have down there. One interesting thing we did on this wall, and we've done this on a couple walls in this house, is they weren't sure if they wanted a TV on this wall or not, but they wanted to be ready in case they wanted to add a TV there. So we've added our Cat 6 drop there. We've also added a brush plate for a conduit. Now behind this wall is another Cat 6, another coax, and the top of that conduit. So that conduit runs from here all the way up to around where a TV would be. Now you obviously can't see it, it's hidden behind the drywall, but we have lots of documentation that we send the client afterwards so that if they do want a TV, it's very simple to cut a small hole where you're going to have your outlet and pull all those wires out of the wall, and now you have your infrastructure for a TV without having it on the wall in case you don't want a TV there. Now this bedroom has a beautiful view, and you may say you never need a TV in here, but just in case you want one here in this corner, we've run a Cat 6 and a coax to this corner. You obviously can't see them on the wall, and the electrician is also in an outlet around this TV height, but what we did is we zigzagged those wires in the stud behind the wall, and so that if in the future you say, oh, I do want a TV in here, you can cut a small hole where that outlet should be, and you can reach in there and pull the wires out. That zigzagging that we did allows it to where whether you cut your hole here or you cut your hole up there, you're going to be able to find the wire. There's no specific spot that you have to cut to make sure you find the wire. It just makes the installation later on much, much easier. One of the requests from the clients was they didn't want to have their access points out in the middle of the room. And so we had to strategically place the Wi-Fi access points in a way that had the best signal while also not being super obvious and in your face. Now, anybody who's designed a Wi-Fi network, the best place for an access point is really right in the middle of your room, right out in the open, so you can see everything and can access everything. But for this house, we sort of tucked them away. So here's one. This is in a bedroom on the side of the house. We have a Cat 6 drop down at the bottom. We also have a Wi-Fi access point right in this corner. So you can put a desk in here, and you also have Wi-Fi, really good signal right there. Now, we would love to put this out in the bedroom or out in the middle of the living room, but out of here in this corner, that's nice and out of the way, but it's close enough to those rooms that they provide a really good signal, and you still get Wi-Fi where you need it. Now, this house has an elevator, and anytime you have an elevator, you got to make sure it has a phone in that elevator. And sometimes it's a little confusing with the different tradesmen who needs to connect the elevator to the telephone system. So we've done it. Sometimes the elevator company will do it. In this case, both of us did it. So here's the elevator here. We ran a wire up into the attic where their elevator control panel is. And so that connects their control panel all the way down to the rack, down at the bottom, where all their internet services come in. Now, depending on where you are, sometimes you can do a plain old telephone service. Sometimes you can do a VoIP. It's really dependent on your local jurisdiction. But we ran a wire, and the elevator company ran a wire. And so that allows you to have multiple redundant connections into the phone lines, however you want to do that. Now down here is a rec room. So they have a TV pre-wire up there. And then one thing we did in this room that we did actually in a couple rooms, you can see the ceiling fan wire there. But we ran 2 speaker wires. One is about right there and one is about right there. Again, hidden in the ceiling. They weren't sure if they wanted speakers, but in the event that they do want some extra sound in here, the wires are already in place and they're already run to the rack. And so all they had to do is cut a hole where the speaker wires are and pull those speaker wires out, and they now have a fully functional speaker setup. Now, one thing that we always do when we do that kind of hidden pre-wire is we will send a document to the clients showing where all the hidden speakers are, what dimensions they are from the center line, how to find them, so that you can cut that hole one time and you know exactly where those wires are. So all the wires in the house come back to this rack. So every TV, every Wi-Fi access point, every drop, whether it's in a bedroom or anything like that, comes back here. And so you can see we have this array of Cat 6 keystones, and we've sort of separated them out. So these are all like bedrooms, these are all TVs, over here you have the offices, and then here you have all the Wi-Fi access points. Now, each of these is labeled both on the front of this keystone and on the wire itself. And you can see we have this separation here between these. This allows you to put a switch in between them, and that way you can have the wires come out nicely from the ports down to the switch, from the ports up into the switch, however you want to do that. They call that waterfalling, and so you can sort of waterfall the ports from here down to the switch, and then from here down to another switch. And so for this house, you probably would have 2 switches, one for PoE and one for non-PoE. You could get a large PoE switch, like a 48 port or something like that, but it's usually more cost effective to split out the PoE into ones that you actually need for Wi-Fi access points and things like that. Now, we think this is essential for a lot of residential pre-wires, is having this mobile rack. So you can see this rack is on caster wheels. It's very common for a rack like this to have wheels, but a key part is to give yourself enough slack. And so you can tell we have slack here to be able to roll the rack away from the wall. Now you can get in there and access devices behind there. You can move this rack anywhere else in this little area. And so it allows you full access around the entirety of the rack to be able to install devices, hook up wires, manage everything. And it's really nice and clean. I want to sort of give you a top-down view here. So here are all the different keystones for everything that we terminated. And you can see they're labeled here on the wires as well. And so this way, if any of the labels on the front were to get smudged or they were getting ripped off or something like that, you have a secondary label just in case. So you don't have to go and trace wires or figure out which one goes to where. You know, every project has its weird challenges. The one here is that this wall is a little narrow to fit all 3 of our panels in. So you can see we got these 2 electrical panels, and then we have our low voltage panel. and it's really tight in this corner. So what we had to do was just trim this edge off a little bit so that the electrical panels wouldn't interfere, and you could manage each of those panels separately without having to take a second panel off in order to access one panel. So just a little minor modification to get everything to fit. Now you may be wondering where all those coax wires are. So they are all here in this low voltage panel. So we always install this 42-inch one, even for houses that don't have a lot of wires. It's just so much nicer to have extra space to have your wires, and you can trace everything very easily. So all these black wires coming down, those are all coax, and so they get sort of bundled up in here, and they go into this amplifying splitter. So your incoming signal goes into there, and it gets amplified by that splitter, and it goes out into each TV. Now, the client may not even use these coax cables. They may just stick with streaming, but it's good to have that in there and have the infrastructure ready for when they need it. The other pre-wire we always do, and we always recommend this, is a demarcation pre-wire. So that orange conduit up there, and there's two wires that are sort of attached to that. Those are for your internet service provider, whether you're getting fiber or Xfinity or anything like that. It's key to have that run to the exterior of the house so that the internet service provider can use those conduits or wires to connect right into where you want, because you want all of your internet service to come into this rack where you have all your networking equipment. It's nice and neat in here, and so you want to have it come in here versus somewhere else in the house where it doesn't really make sense. Now, a lot of racks will be enclosed, and so you have locks on them. Those are especially important for businesses, but for residential, you don't really need locks on your rack, and so we like using these open frame ones. They're much easier to access equipment and things like that, especially in a storage room like this where you don't need it to be perfectly clean, and accessibility and maintainability are the priorities here. But one cool thing that we usually do with these open frame racks is, because we don't have anything to attach wires to on this side wall, is we use these lacing bars. And so these come in different sizes, but these lacing bars just help give a little bit of tension relief on these wires. And so as they're coming off the wall, they can lay on these lacing bars as they go to their final destination. And then we also have these hooks on the outside to help sort of manage the wire on the exterior of the rack. So you can see we have our wires sort of coming in through that way, managing through those hooks. And one thing that those lacing bars will help do is create space between the rack units. So you can see we have this gap, and so we're going to want to have a switch in there. And so that switch needs to come out pretty far, and you can see we sort of have somewhat of a gap in here between those bottom wires and those top wires. And that allows you to insert a switch in there without having to move wires away. They're not laying on top of the switch, and so they're not getting super hot as the switch heats up. And so it just helps protect your wires a little bit from the other devices that need to go in here. Now, a big consideration nowadays is power management. So down here at the bottom is a UPS, or an uninterrupted power supply. And so this plugs into the wall, and this actually provides power to the entire rack. All the rack's power goes through here. And what it does is, anytime you have a power outage, especially like a very short blip, where power goes out for maybe 5 seconds or so, this UPS will keep the entire rack powered for a short amount of time while that power blip happens. And so the benefit is that your entire rack doesn't go offline, for a moment, and that keeps your router, all your Wi-Fi on, so that, if you have a power blip, your whole network doesn't go down briefly. It will stay on temporarily while that power blip is happening, and the UPS will keep everything online. And that the power distribution unit here that looks really just like a power strip, it's got 6 outlets in the front and then a bunch more outlets in the back. This is hooked into the UPS, and so all the power outlets and everything that needs to go into these outlets here gets plugged into the PDU, and then the PDU goes down here to the UPS. And so every device that's plugged into this rack will be connected to the UPS and be controlled by this PDU. And so you have sort of a master switch here. It tells you surge, ground, and power. And so really good power management system here. Now, we spoke about speaker wires. We haven't really talked about audio much. So this is where all the speaker wires come in. You can see they're sort of just loosely laid here. We didn't want to tighten these up yet because all the audio equipment isn't in yet. And so once the equipment comes in, then you can trim the wires, get them exactly the right length that you want.
label them better, and just have it a little bit cleaner. But in here, you probably have some Sonos amps, maybe a receiver, but really you're looking for a whole home audio distribution solution. We like running them back to the rack because then that gives you a hardwired connection from the amplifiers into all your networking equipment, and everything is in a very central location. The benefit of using a Sonos system here is that you don't have to connect HDMI from the TVs to the Sonos to the amplifiers. They can communicate with each other over the network, and so you don't have to have an HDMI cable from each TV all the way back to the rack, which is too long for an HDMI run. So that gives you a lot more flexibility when you're adding your audio equipment.
So that's it. That completes this residential wiring job. We completed the pre-wire and we completed this trim out phase, which is sort of terminating, adding all the face plates, making everything look nice and ready to use for equipment. So that's the next step, is adding all the equipment. So routers, access points, TVs, speakers. That will be a little ways down the line. Usually the house needs to be done with paint, done with dust, anything sort of construction related should be done at that point, so that any of the routers and any of the TVs, they don't get affected by any of the construction that's happening in the house. And so that will be the very last step. But the wiring part is all done. Thanks for watching, everybody. Follow for more tech tips, and we'll see you in the next one.